Hello and welcome to another Focus Finder. This is Mark Siddall from LEAP, the low energy architectural practice that uses a lovingly engineered architectural process. Now what I'd like to do today is to talk through the 7 stages of design and construction. And these stages have been developed by the RIBA and kind of within the plan of work, and this is used, the plan of work is used by all architects within the UK, and it's widely recognised within the construction industry itself. So I just thought I'd spend a few minutes to explain what it is, how it works, and also some of the ways that it can be more nuanced, shall we say, because the plan of work, it works at a very strategic level, and it needs some further refinement in order to be made to really kind of work in a useful sense in many respects. So first of all, what we've got the strategic definition phase. And this is the stage you're probably at right now, where you've not yet phoned or spoken to an architect. You've been thinking about your project for some time, trying to grapple with some problems, some sort of challenge or obstacles arisen, which has actually led you to think that you might need to do something to change your quality of life, your quality of your work, your home, your workplace, something that's causing you to make some change. So whether it's you're thinking of refurbishing your property, whether you're thinking of extending it, whether you're thinking of building buying some land and building a new property, all of these things can be an option that you may be considering. So moving forward from here, you're wondering about how much the thing's going to cost, how long is it going to take, and you're wondering about how much space you're going to need. And also other, you may be thinking about environmental considerations and how you're going to make the building use less energy. You may be thinking about issues in terms of comfort. A whole host of criteria will be going through your mind, and then you'll find yourself wanting to pick up the phone and speak to an architect. And this is the point at time in which you'll move into the preparation and brief phase. Now, preparation and brief is basically a more detailed development stage, whereby you're starting to really pull together an understanding of the project with an architect. From here you'll move forward into the concept design stage, whereby you're getting some conceptual understanding of the design and developing a kind of a broad appreciation of how the project could work in practice. A more nuanced stage then develops, whereby it's known as developed design, whereby you're now really working into some detail. You might have looked at a range of options. Now drilling down onto one particular option and making sure that it works. That's then taken through to technical design, where the construction drawings are developed. Then there's construction, obviously, whilst the project's on site. Then there's the handover and closeout phase. And then this moves over to what's known as the in-use phase. Now, I'm just going to lead you through this in a little bit more detail on the following slide, because I think it's, well, as I've said, this is quite a generic set of criteria here, and at the beginning certainly, and throughout the design process itself, there's some more nuanced appreciation that's often beneficial. So here we are, strategic definition. This is where you are right now, as I've mentioned. So you've got to a certain point in time and you're starting to think about the fact that you need an architect in order to be able to move forward your project. And the best way to do that, in my experience, is for you to pick up the phone or to drop me an email, and we can arrange a meeting. This meeting is what I term the 40-minute focus finder. And during this time we start to discuss your budget, your space requirements, your aspirations. We also start to think about the people that might need to be involved in your project to help you to get it through to completion. And we're effectively looking at 3 questions, which I've asked repeatedly in many of my meetings, is where are you now, where are you trying to get to, and how are we going to get there? And then we can start to develop a plan of action. And really what this little focus finder does is it acts as a filter to help you determine what your best path forwards is going to be. Because if you're still at what I would regard as a tentative stage, you're not fully committed, you've still got some things that you need to go out and find out about areas that you need to go and clarify. Then it'll be a case of then moving to the one-page action plan. And the way that this works is that once every 30 days we have a 1-hour telephone conversation, and we work together to help strategize how you can move your project forward within the next 30 days. And as I've mentioned, we go through these key questions. Where are you now? Where are you trying to get to? And how are we going to get there? And we work out the next 30 days through prioritizing the activities that you've got to undertake in order to get your project moved forwards and move to the stage whereby you're able to move forward with an architect. And talking of which, once you've got to that stage and you're ready to move forwards, then what I recommend is the needs and options review. And this really starts to develop a more keen understanding of what your requirements are, what you're trying to achieve, and it starts to pull together all of the information that's required in order to create a project execution plan. Now, you'll find up above, in the 6 buttons, there's some more information about these stages that I'm highlighting now in red, and you'll be able to follow and explore what they are in more detail by watching the videos or reading the text that I've prepared on those. From there, you'll be able to move forward into the preparation and brief phase. So, basically the needs and options review enables you to go out to an architect and get a fee proposal. And the architect will have enough knowledge and clarity about your project to be able to move it further forwards. And at this point in time, you're in a position whereby you'll be able to invite an architect down to site. They'll be able to come and have a look around the site and gain an understanding of what it is you're seeking to achieve on that site. And from there, the best thing to do is to move forward and get some site analysis undertaken to determine that the land's appropriate, to develop an understanding of what the constraints are, whether it's watercourses on the site or under the site even, whether there's mine workings, whether there are planning constraints, how hedgerows and tree preservation orders might have an influence, or what's the impact upon biodiversity, and is there any kind of protected ecology there, in which areas are they, and could that affect the position of your property. So there's some finer issues there in terms of developing an appreciation for the site analysis and which areas may be developable and can be adapted in some form. And then you move forward into the next phase, which is the feasibility study. So at this stage you might look at 2 or 3, maybe even 4 different options to see what can fit onto the site and what kind of building might start to arise from that. Once you've got an understanding, at this stage there's no real elevations or sections or room planning that's done. We're just looking in a strategic fashion to see whether the project is feasible. Now, key thing to think about is that if you're spending hundreds of thousands or if not millions of pounds on a site, then you really need to be thinking about getting these actions undertaken before you actually buy the plot of land itself, because the cost of getting this exploratory work done is minimal compared to actually shelling out on the land and then finding that there's constraints that are then going to cause additional costly additional costs that could actually challenge the financial viability of the project. So then moving forward from there, we're able to look at the concept design. So this is basically moving through developing the feasibility study in a more refined fashion so that it's explored in 3 dimensions, and we can then start to develop an understanding of the relationship between one building and the site and its context. And from there, it's possible to hone down from a range of options and develop excuse me, enough information for the outline planning application. Once you have planning approval, then you're able to move forwards outside of that gateway. So what you'll have done is you'll have reviewed the concept design, signed it all off, we'll have pulled together the relevant information to enable you to move to make an outline planning application. And we can have spoken to the planning authority on your behalf to help get the project on track and moving further forwards. So, and we'll also start to gain an understanding of whether planning approval is even likely. And if not, then there are various different options available. So from there, it's a case of moving the design forwards. If you've gone for outline planning, you don't have to do that. You could just look to move straight forwards to the planning application. And so what you'd want is a more developed design that has been explored in a lot more detail. We've thought about the space planning of the house and the building. We've thought about how different buildings are going to be located on the site, and the construction technologies, the aesthetics, the spatial requirements, how the character of the home is going to suit your needs and make it somewhere that you're going to want to return to in 20, 30, 50 years time. It's designing the property so that it really suits everything that you want, whilst taking on board any other constraints that have been imposed by external parties such as planning authorities. So once you have received a report from us documenting the design and scheduling the specifications, the outline specifications that we've been developing and agreeing, and refining the project execution plan that was developed in the needs and options review, then once we get approval from you, we're then able to move forward and make the planning application itself. Now, after about 8 to 12 weeks, we normally expect to have received the planning application through and confirmation one way or another whether the planning application has been successful. And so therefore, once on the basis that we get approval, then we move further forwards, and therefore we move into the technical design stage. So now we start to think about how to developing the general arrangement drawings, so plans, sections, elevations. We think about the schedules that are required. We think about the specifications that are required, and we start to develop these up with you so that you can get the project that you've been specifying and determining so far. From this stage, we then move forwards and seek client approval once again, so you're getting plenty of options to sign off and allow the project to proceed or not. So we've got these little gateways in there to make sure that you're happy with the way that the design progresses, and that we're not just tearing off into the sunset. And then from there, we were able to go into making the building regulations application. So this is this another formal process that we've got to go through to make sure that the building is designed competently and safely, and that all of the key statutory requirements are being addressed. And from there, we then move forward into the once we've got approval, we move into the technical design phase, stage 2, which is where the detailed design can be refined in more appropriately. Now, technical design 4.2 can actually be run in parallel to the building regulations application having been submitted. So therefore, we don't necessarily have to lose time in progressing the project. Once again, we go through another project gateway, whereby the project's reviewed with you, and then we're able to go out to tender. So we normally go and speak to building contractors, normally around about 4, and they would be pre-vetted, so to make sure that they have the appropriate skills, knowledge, workmanship, and inclination to be able to develop your project in the most appropriate way. And on the basis that an appropriate sum is achieved, and you've agreed the financial starting point, and we've got the contract in place, then we are able to appoint a contractor. So we're able to help provide oversight and guidance during this whole process, so that you're not left hanging. And then you get the contractor will be in the mobilisation phase. Now, what this really means is that they are finishing off on one project, getting ready to move over and start work on your project, and they will be also then getting the site set up with any safety fencing around the site, setting up the porta cabins and whatever, so the sheds, so that way they've got a clean, healthy, safe working environment for them to do their work. And then we're able to start on site. And from there, we start to move forward into the construction phase, whereby the building contractor is stripping the site, clearing the foundations, setting up the foundations, installing the floor slabs, doing walls, internal floors, external walls, roof, installing the windows, going through the various different fixes, as they're known, where the electricians, the plumbers, the joiners are all working within the property to get the inside of the building resolved appropriately. And then of course we move into having the decorators in and moving through to the more finished stage. Now normally what happens on the passive house projects, the low energy projects that I work on, is that site visits are also utilised, and this is what helps to guarantee, helps to ensure that the properties will perform appropriately. Now obviously there's always those things whereby the architect can't be on site all the time, but a series of regular site visits can actually, or does actually, help to improve and ensure that there's continuity and that the standards of workmanship on site are maintained. And it also means that any issues can be resolved where there's queries in a fairly expedient fashion. Once the project's complete, the building's finished and decorated, then we're into the handover and closeout phase. So therefore we're moving into a stage whereby we're thinking about the refining and finalising the user guides, and we're also thinking about looking at the snagging, which is looking for minor defects in the construction, the finishes, making sure that it's all appropriate and it's something that you would expect. And we're then able to, as I say, finish that snagging phase and achieve practical completion, and then move forwards into the in-use phase. And this is where you've moved into the property and you're making use of it. And it's at this point in time that I normally end up doing some building performance evaluation of some form, whether it's just keeping an eye on your, working with you to keep an eye on your fuel bills so that we can gain an understanding of how the building's actually performing, or sometimes I actually introduce data loggers, temperature and humidity sensors, to help determine that how the building's performing in terms of its climatic considerations inside. And also I often introduce a building performance evaluation questionnaire to gain some understanding of how the building's performing, whether it's meeting your expectations. And this, these kind of things are not, quite rarely undertaken by architectural practices at the moment, but it's something that I consider to be a key requirement in terms of ensuring that my projects develop incrementally from one project to the next, so I've got that continual feedback loop that actually takes place. Okay, so that's the design process in a nutshell, and up above you'll see that above this video you'll see that there are 6 icons that you can basically click on. So thanks for watching, and if you found the information useful, then you'd like to know more about the design services that are on offer, then please click on the buttons that you'll see up above, and they'll take you through a little bit of text or another video, and it'll explain a bit more about those individual services and how they actually work and how you can get something from them and how they really start to assist you in the development of your project. Conversely, if you find that you're not yet in a position to really want to even speak to an architect, then maybe all you want to do is enter your details down below, your name and email address, and I'll be able to send you an email with my newsletter. And I offer various different tidbits and guidance to help you develop your project and move it further forwards, things that are useful for you to reflect upon and help you to prepare for engaging an architect, or things that you might want to think about once you've employed an architect at a later date. Really, if you're not familiar with the building industry, then this newsletter can be very, very useful and powerful. And if you are familiar with the building industry, then don't be afraid, because I think it could be useful for you as well, because I've developed a rather unique design process that is complementary, of course, to what everyone would expect from the industry, but it's somewhat more refined. And there are also, in order to deliver buildings, very low energy buildings, then there's additional skills that are required, and I often talk about those in the newsletter as well, to help up the ante for the construction industry as a whole. So please fill in the the details below, and I'd love to keep in touch with you and hear from you. And yeah, so all that's left to say now is thank you very much for having watched the video, and I hope that you found it tremendously useful and informative. If you go and have a look at the red buttons up above or enter your details below, that'd be great. And I look forward to speaking to you soon. Okay, thanks a lot.